Okay, let's take a look at Nozick's definitions of value and meaning. This is a pretty ambitious chapter. I'm not sure if I really agree with everything he says here, but we'll at least hear what he has to say, and we can give our critique of it later. It would be pretty valuable, pun intended, I guess, to have a definition of value and meaning that would, amongst other things, that would enable us to give explanations of what makes things more or less valuable and meaningful, and that in turn can give us justification for decisions that we make, ways that we choose to be, how we live our life. And to have justified beliefs there is no trivial matter. So he may not be exactly right, but let's see what there is to be said and what he says. So he begins distinguishing two different ways in which something might be valuable. This is a very traditional distinction, going at least back to Aristotle, perhaps farther than that, in recognizing that things might be valuable in one or two different ways. First, we might say that something is valuable instrumentally, meaning that what makes it valuable is really what you can do with it, its use value, so to speak, or what makes it valuable is something else valuable that it leads us to, or that it produces. We can maybe say that it's valuable as a means to some other valuable thing. So when something's valuable in that way, we see it that it's a valuable instrument. In and of itself, it may not possess much value, but we would still deem it valuable because it leads us to something else valuable. You probably think of lots of examples, maybe in education, depending on your view of those things, maybe working out, depending on your view of those things, currency, I would think. In each of those cases, you may not consider the thing itself to be that valuable, but you can get lots of valuable things with an education, from working out, and certainly with currency. The more troublesome concept is probably intrinsic value. This would be something that's valuable just in virtue of what it is or in virtue of its intrinsic properties, not because of what it leads to. So philosophers have traditionally said that what's intrinsically valuable is either pleasure or happiness. Immanuel Kant also said that the good will is intrinsically valuable, and really there's been a number of different definitions of what's intrinsically valuable, though they all recognize that what makes something intrinsically valuable is its own internal nature or its own intrinsic properties. We could maybe think of what is an indication that a particular thing is either an instrumental value or an intrinsic value. An indication that something is an instrumental value would be to consider how we would regard that thing if we took away the instrumental connections or the things that it leads to, and we were just focusing on the thing itself. Would we still regard it as valuable? If education didn't give you better opportunities in a career, would you still regard it as valuable? If working out didn't enhance your health and longevity, would we still regard it as valuable? If currency weren't able to be used to purchase things, would it still be regarded as valuable? If we say no, then that's at least an indication that all of those things are valued instrumentally, valued as means. So what shows that something's intrinsically valuable? There's no single test that everybody agrees upon, but one thing that comes to mind is this, and this is kind of odd. If you can't give a reason for why the thing is valuable, I guess beyond it being that thing itself, that's kind of an indication. Here would be an example. If somebody asked you why you value pleasure, gosh, I'm not really sure what I'd say. Same thing for happiness. You might say that you value all these other things because you think they lead to happiness. But if somebody said, well, why do you value happiness itself? We might not have an answer. That's one indication that that might be what the kind of base of value, because it's valuable just because it's happiness. We can't appeal or point to some other thing that makes happiness good. It's good just because it's happiness, or pleasure is good just because of what it is. So those are just some ideas, and he's here just kind of laying out the terrain for an important distinction within value. That's not yet to say anything about what value is, or what the actual nature of value is, and that's what he turns to next. So this is when he gets into the concept of an organic unity. The idea there is of being a unity in diversity. So it's kind of a oneness into manyness. The unity being the oneness, the manyness being the diversity. When you've got both, and they're related to one another, we've got a unity in diversity, and Nozick will also call that an organic unity. I guess the original idea there is that organisms, living organisms, inevitably possess a kind of unity. There's one life that all the different elements and systems in the organism support, but there's many different elements and systems in the organism. So that's the manyness. You can think of your many organs, and respiratory system, the digestive system, circulatory system, all the different cells, and all of that manyness is tied together as one life, and that's the unity. So we can see in organisms there is a unity in diversity, and that's why we call it an organic unity, special kind of unity. So Nozick wants to take that as the paradigm, definition, and criterion of value. He gives a number of examples of how we can see that at work in works of art, in mathematics, and science. Kind of leave you to check that out in the book. What he's doing there, I think, is giving supporting examples of how these things that we value, art, math, and science, exhibit this paradigm property, organic unity, so these would be supporting his case. So number 3, there's interesting that there's a tension between these two elements of value. So the more unity, the tighter unity we've got, the less likely it is that we'll have great diversity. We might put it this way: the more diversity we've got, the more difficult it is to achieve a real tight unity. And to the extent that we've got a very tight unity, it'll be difficult to maintain a wide diversity. One way we might see that difficulty playing out is maybe in a community where we've got a diverse community. The more diverse the community is, arguably the more difficult it is to really maintain a tight unity in the community. Of course, we want to do that. But the more diverse populations we introduce, the greater is the range of interest that we all have to kind of bring together in one harmonious community. So we can see there how greater diversity puts a challenge on creating a real tight unity. Maybe in like science, we might see the difficulty in finding one theory that explains everything. This is notoriously difficult in physics, where kind of explanations that Newtonian physics works pretty well for macro phenomenon, but it doesn't work for quantum phenomena. And the account that we give for quantum phenomenon, very small phenomena, doesn't apply